So, Arjanna.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me in your beautiful home.
Thank you for being here.
You are a yoga teacher, and most recently you've been holding these beautiful women's circles, which I'd like to talk about with you today. But could you tell us how you came to Australia and how you decided to start these circles?
Yeah, awesome. Good question. I came to Australia on a plane. Mm-hmm. Many of my people have come here as refugees. Mm-hmm. I had a very fortunate upbringing where my mum really pushed us towards education because she believed that was our way out of a war-driven country, war-torn country at the time. And I came here, did my degree, and took my little academic bum on the path that felt right at the time, and it didn't serve me, and I did have a really big breakdown of my physical and mental health, which really forced me to pause because I was caught up in the spinning wheel of living in the capitalist world. And that little pause was the best thing I'd ever done for myself. It gave me a moment to breathe, and I'd been practicing yoga pretty regularly for about 5 to 10 years by then anyway. So it just felt really beautiful and natural to drop into studying more yoga. And that's how I came to be a yoga teacher. The women's circles for me are a really special part of yoga. I consider that to be an offering of yoga because...
Interesting.
Yeah. Anything meaningful, what we're doing right now to me is yoga because we show up with intention to connect and we're sharing a meaningful experience. And I'd like to also make the distinction that in my women's circle, what I actually mean is it is a feminine circle. So it embraces the spectrum of the feminine in both you and I, and all the way up to the heterosexual male. So I feel like anyone is welcome if they are willing to work on their feminine. So far it's conventionally women that have shown up. But I feel like the world would be a better place if we all embraced and leaned into our feminine a little bit more, particularly the masculine. And that was the mission, really, to help people share in each other's feminine magic. There's a bit of sacred ceremony, ritual, meditation included. And this, to me, embodies the learnings of yoga, my learnings of yoga.
That's beautiful. Because it is very important, especially with the crises that are happening worldwide, that people connect. Do you think it's harder, being a woman, for women to connect? Do you feel like we have a deeper wound in comparison to males? Do you think our circles are more necessary at this pivotal time, or is it equal? What do you think?
Look, I feel like wounding and healing doesn't discriminate gender. However, what I've observed is there's just a lot of willingness to connect and gather and heal, and that seems to be really accelerated in women. I think there's a lot of work to do with the divine masculine, we like to call them, at the enchanted life. But yes, I think that when women are presented with the opportunity or just a space or an invitation to come together with meaning, the magic just seems to unfold on its own, and that's what I've observed, if that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just curious, how do you think this feminine rising or this feminine energy that you're welcoming, because it's popping up everywhere and it's beautiful, how do you think it is going to help the world?
Well, I feel like we have both. We have feminine and masculine within us. All of us do. And somewhere along our evolution, especially as we have seen the Western civilization rising above the Oriental Eastern ways of being and living, the masculine has really dominated. We all want to do things, we all want to achieve things and revel in challenges and that goal-oriented living. The feminine seems to have been pushed to a side, and I think that if everyone, the world leaders, yourself and I, embrace that quality, it's not the absence of strength, we're still warriors. We would perhaps not be so brash and driven in that sense, in the masculine sense. It's not a bad thing, but it seems to just be overriding the feminine.
Absolutely.
And there are some lessons to be learned there.
Do you want to explain some differences for people that don't understand? Because there are so many people that, you know, aren't even aware of the polarities to begin with. But then also, you know, masculine, if you were going to say, you know, it's driving nature, it's assertive, it's holding the space. What are some feminine qualities then that you could share?
Yeah, it's really like yin and yang. If you've seen that symbol, that's everywhere. Lots of people get them tattooed. One cannot exist without the other. It's Shiva Shakti. It's just this beautiful balance. So yang is essential. It's the rising of the sun. It's the powerhouse. It's what gets us out of bed doing what we need to do. And the yin energy is the, I would like to think of it as the lunar energy. It's the feeling body, the emotional self, and even the intuitive, magical, mystical self, which doesn't really have a great dialogue at the moment. I feel like the minute you talk about sacred ritual or ceremony or anything like that, there's a large proportion of people that tap out or tune out as though that is dismissive. But this is important work, and I feel that, you know, we lean more towards the feminine at the Enchanted Life women's circles to really celebrate and embrace and call it into our lives, because people seem to be doing really well with their masculine, I think.
And if I'm correct, it's also sort of leaning into the unknown as well, not always rushing for answers, or like you said, goal orientated and things. It's that pause, it's that taking a moment to feel. And on that note, in your circles, do you ever draw attention to the cyclical nature of the feminine, like with the people that come there? Do you talk about that, especially with women's cycles and things like that?
Absolutely. So the circles were born honouring the traditional way of gathering for women, the feminine, on the full moon or new moon. So women gather in the new moon, and definitely the red tent, those types of thoughts were considered when we gather. We don't emphasize so much only on the sort of, because like I said, we want this to be approachable to those that identify as female who perhaps don't have a feminine cycle. We much rather, we more prioritize identifying cycles in nature. So anything that is happening, that is churning, cycles we can break, cycles we can embrace, cycles that are related to remembering, and sort of the cycle we create within our lives from just sitting in a circle. Like there's a lot of spinning happening, spirals occur around nature in so many magical and beautiful ways. And yeah, the circles are also very practical, you know, they're real, because sometimes it's hard enough getting out of bed and making breakfast for the kids if you're a mum, and showing up to this circle.
Exactly.
They can be incredibly human as they are mystical. So we hold space for it all.
And there's a whole unwiring that happens. Like I can speak for myself, but when you do become aware of those cycles and that you aren't supposed to be on every day, bits of your life can fall apart. And even just going to circles, you know, and then you're realizing, oh, well, maybe there is 2 weeks that I'm my most, you know, sunshine yang energy, and then there's another that's not. So it's a commitment, isn't it? The circle, of course, you're there to bond emotionally, but it's a spiritual journey, don't you think?
Absolutely, yes. I think this awareness that you're talking about of the self, it begins with the self. Yes, I have cycles within me. The seasons that occur around us occur within us, right? So we've got our winter, that's when we're a bit tired and sad, and then we've got the autumn leading up to the winter. That's when we might be getting a bit grumpy, and then after winter there's spring, which is a hopeful time, and then summer. You're yang, you're in your most vibrant self, and it's this. There's a lot of power in even acknowledging that, which was for me in my life taken away from me in the corporate world where I was pushed to work 7 days a week. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So even that simple remembering and empowering each other to remember and acknowledge and embrace that is a really beautiful thing. And then that begins the process, that shamanic process, that spiritual process, which everyone is capable of. Everyone has gifts to offer. Everyone has magic they can tap into. That just comes, I think, like you said, it's the portal that awakens that memory.
Yeah. You've made me curious, excuse my naivety, but in Sri Lanka, what would you say is the most predominant spiritual practices there?
I would say, like, when I grew up there, I just remember life being full of color, regardless of what religion was expressing that color. We had practicing Buddhists. They were the predominant people. There were Hindus. There were Christians. We grew up Catholic. And there were people of Islamic faith. And I just remember thinking, wow, there's a reason to celebrate nearly every single day because there was so much color and festival associated with each of these people's practices. They seemed to live in harmony, and there was a lot of ritual around me growing up, for sure. And definitely in Sri Lanka, the full moon, everyone gets it off.
Wow.
So when I came over here, I was really surprised that wasn't happening.
Yeah.
Because that's when everyone is really heightened. And I think it's wise to give the day off to the people. I'll do that if I ever own a company, which I do.
I love that. So it's obviously energized you. You've grown up with that awareness of ritual. So do you want to explain, if one was to come to one of your circles, what can they expect?
Like I said, they're very different every time because we are different every time. And the things that we invoke are directly inspired by what's going on in our personal lives. And this is where the maiden in me requires a mother. And that's where my business partner, Bridie, comes in because she's a mum. So between the two of us, I lie on the couch and say, I'm tired from too much sun. And then she's got a very real mirror and a very different perspective. Between the two of us, we have very different capabilities and magic. So most circles involve an acknowledgement of country. That is a no-brainer for us. It is something that we want to connect people with, to the land they are on right now, the Darkinjung people. And we should have done that when we began. And also the seasons, the moons, any astrological events of significance, the chakras, whatever we feel is most dominant in our own lives inspires the circle. There's always a time to share. So every woman will have the chance to speak, which is why we don't want to let them get too much bigger than they are already. We're so grateful for the women that are already showing up. So we'll run more if we grow any more, but that's sort of where we are sitting, is intimate, connected conversation. And we always part ways with an activity or action to really embody what we've talked about so that it doesn't feel like we've just come and offloaded.
Yes.
We take something away.
Of course. That's beautiful. And it obviously would help external relationships, especially partnerships, don't you think? Because women gathering, they're supposed to gather.
Yeah.
And so what do you think some of the benefits are for when they leave and continue relationships with partners and children?
Well, I feel like this is what we have heard from the ladies so far. We stay in touch. We are very hands-on. Well, sometimes if you're a mother, and I don't know about this, I'm not a mother just yet, coming together and taking off the hats and labels that you wear in your life, whether it be mother or career woman or teacher or student, whatever it is, and just sitting with just your divine feminine in that space, people say really liberates and empowers them to take that into what they're doing in their other lives outside the circles. I've felt and seen how healing the circle circles could be to those that are in transition. We seem to attract, if we put the call out, attract women that are going through changes in relationships, moving and associated ripple effects of marriage and relationship changes, and women that are stepping into motherhood seem to be coming in, and women that have gone on from mother to crone. So these transitions of maiden to mother, mother to crone, we see all these different patterns showing up and lots of different healing happening. And the interesting thing is we just sit there and hold space, and we throw a few things out there, like a few meditations, but the rest seems to be happening just from the power of us sitting together.
Wow.
So that's the beautiful thing about it, is I take no credit for all the positive things that come out of it.
Yeah,
it's
you're just
really
the
special.
fire starter, you know,
Yes,
the
I like
matchstick.
doing that.
And how has it helped your life, your journey, you know, yoga and women's circles and your connection to spirit? Like, let's dive into that. How did it happen, and how has it helped you? How is it your saving grace?
This is my life's work, you know. I know it sounds a bit cheesy, but when you look at things like what's your dharma, what's your life's purpose and work, I feel like I can say that I have found where my passion and my career, my profession, they all intersect very beautifully. I don't know where it ends. It kind of melds into my personal life too. So I'm really grateful to be able to wake up every day and do this for a living. I think that's all that I could ask for, is that I feel really fulfilled and really joyful every day. And of course there are times where it's challenging, but giving back really fuels my soul.
Yeah.
Cheesy, but true.
Because you've taken on the spiritual aspect of yoga as well. It's not just a physical flow for you. You're the union and that sort of religious experience is deep within you. Am I right?
Well, you seem to know about it too, so that means you have a practice. Well, you know what it's like. You don't ask for it. I love a hot, sweaty class. I love my Lululemon pants. Oh, I don't know if I can say that. I love having a nice bum. You know, all the good things that happen when you practice a hot, sweaty yoga class. I love the dynamic practice, and I still stay connected to the asana aspect. But yoga is an 8-limbed path. You know what I mean? And if we, as teachers and students, practice for any period of time, it becomes really hard and becomes a disservice to not honor the other limbs of yoga, which includes meditation, which includes what you do unto yourself and others, i.e. don't be a dick, all the other things of breath and movement and union. And part of that is a connection to the divine. And I don't really know if the divine is God, but there is something divine within you and I. There's something divine around us, and I can't ignore that. I feel like it speaks to me and through me, and it's not something I asked for. I like to just be lighthearted and humorous, but it's all part of it. Yeah,
it's so beautiful. So the Central Coast, how did you end up here, and why do you love it?
Well, how we ended up here was lockdown in the city of Sydney, and really feeling a call to move into something closer to nature, you know, somewhere where we can breathe, just a breath. I felt very suffocated, and I had been feeling that way for a long time. The island girl in me was really sad, and we actually just looked at a map and we went to some house inspections and fell in love with this place here. I didn't know a lot about the Central Coast when I first came here. And I love it now.
Amazing, simple as that. Just opened up a map. I love that. So to wrap up, we'll just tie it in. What would be, to talk about the other side, the masculine side, what would be a practice for a masculine bodied person to tap into their feminine?
This is one thing that I've been really asking to move into also. I love working with women, but the boys need to do the work too. Look, I think really it starts with the ability to reflect and freeing the throat chakra a little bit, because the women seem to really be able to chat away to each other and really share in that with ease. we have seen guys show up to men's circles really awkward, really unsure, very different energy to those that identify as women, and walk away feeling really light. So I feel like the men, the masculine, I would say challenge what you usually do. If what you like to do is go to the pub and grab some drinks to connect, maybe challenge that with a coffee and a surf, and that is already bringing more mindfulness into how you gather. I'm not saying that girls don't need to do the same, but there's just needs to be a movement towards gathering with intention of sharing and healing, which is I've heard it's a bigger challenge because it requires more vulnerability. But there's space held for that. I know Kurt runs at Modern Organic men's circles by donation, just because he wants to open the doors for the boys to come together, and there are these men that are embodied in their feminine, who carry themselves in balance, that we can all learn from, I think.
Absolutely. It's wild. I have friends that are guys that have explained to me that they would never ask a guy that they just met to go and have a coffee, because that just is a line for them. That it's obscure. It means maybe you want more or things. It has to be a beer. And even if you've just met them once, you still wouldn't do it. And yeah, that's just a rewiring, isn't it? Just to be comfortable in yourself and like, why can't we go for a walk and have a coffee?
I've never seen that happen, but yeah. Well, that's why I feel I have a lot of faith in yoga, because that's where my journey into all of this started. Sometimes you need to work with the body first, and the body speaks where the lips can't. And I've seen so many beautiful boys, surfers, tradies, whatever walks of life you want to think about from the coast, who walk through those doors at yoga, and they digest all the information that needs to be digested, release all the tightness and hardness that needs to be released through a practice that is very, very unassuming and very potent in its power. So even if you come into a power class or a dynamic vinyasa class, there are some sneaky bits in there that will crack you open. And I think that's easier somewhat, going from the pub to yoga to some maybe is a lot easier than embodying all the other feminine aspects, because yoga is the balance of Shiva and Shakti.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you so much for chatting with me today. It's been beautiful.
Thank you for being here.
Appreciate it.